The gun range was loud, but the laughter was louder. 5 men in camo hoodies and Oakleys stood near lane 7, cracking jokes like it was their personal hunting lodge. Big trucks in the lot, bigger egos behind the triggers. They weren't just practicing, they were performing. Then she walked in. Black, tall, slim, black hoodie, no logos, hard case in one hand, phone in the other. No swagger, no eye contact, just presence. Looks like someone's lost, one of the men muttered. The others looked up. She's cute, said another, laughing. What's that, a purse or a Pelican case? The group snorted. She gonna shoot selfies or targets? She said nothing, just walked to the open lane, punched in a code. The gate unlocked. She moved like she'd been here 100 times, and had the right to be here 100 more. One of the men followed, grinning like a dog with a new toy. You know this is the rifle section, right, sweetheart? Not pistols, not yoga class. Still nothing. He leaned closer. This ain't the kind of sport you can accessorize with. She finally looked at him. Just once. A calm, emotionless glance that stopped the grin cold. No anger, no fear, just precision. Then she said, back up. You're standing in my wind lane. He blinked. You're WH? Before he could finish, she popped the case open. And what came out wasn't store-bought. It was a custom-built sniper system. Matte black, bolt action, suppressor ready. Scoped, zeroed, and used. Not like a collector, like a killer. The man stepped back. His smirk cracked. Still, someone in the group whispered, bet she couldn't hit a plate at 200. And that's when she chambered the first round. Think they're still laughing? Drop your predictions below. Like if you know a real threat doesn't have to announce itself. Subscribe, because when she pulls the trigger, it's not just targets that fall. Alexis King lived a life built on silence. Not because she feared being seen, but because being invisible was her job. Her apartment sat on the top floor of a concrete building in Arlington, Virginia. 1 bedroom, minimal furniture, no wall decor, just the essentials. A pull-up bar, a locked weapons case bolted under the floorboards, and a row of perfectly stacked running shoes. Neighbors thought she worked in security or fitness. One woman down the hall said Alexis gave off former athlete energy. Another guest yoga instructor, calm, athletic, focused. The kind of person you didn't ask too many questions about, and who never gave you any answers anyway. She liked it that way. She woke up at 0420, no alarm needed. Her internal clock had been hardened by years of operations in climates where time zones didn't matter and sunrises weren't guaranteed. Her routine never changed. 5-mile run, no music, no watch, 11 minutes of stillness. Not meditation, just breath control. 1 apple, 1 glass of water, no caffeine, no sugar, no weakness. She checked her hands each morning for tremors. There were never any. Not because she was calm, because she was trained. By age 22, she had already completed 2 Black Ops rotations no one could talk about. Not even inside the CIA. Not because they were illegal, but because they were perfect. Sniper, counter-sniper, hostage intervention, long-range elimination. Alexis didn't rack up kills. She solved problems, quietly, cleanly, and permanently. By 28, she was stationed out of Camp Peary, Langley's covert training hub. She wasn't the best female shot. She was the best shot, period. And everyone who mattered knew it. The whispers inside the agency called her Hollow Point. Not because of what she used, but because that's how her targets ended up. Empty, final, irreversible. She never missed. Not once. And she never had to fire twice. She didn't like crowds, didn't go to bars, didn't carry social media. Her phone was scrubbed, encrypted, and replaced every 60 days. She used burner apps to set meetings. She rotated grocery stores based on a 3-week pattern with calculated breaks and scheduled to avoid surveillance detection. But it wasn't paranoia. It was discipline. She had enemies she didn't know. That's how elite she was. You don't reach the top of the food chain by getting loud. You get there by being too quiet to track. too fast to catch, and too precise to challenge. When the president's security detail was overhauled following an international incident in Warsaw, Alexis wasn't recruited. She was extracted, pulled from field work, given clearances higher than most cabinet members. No press release, no photo ops, no handshake ceremonies, just a quiet appointment. Primary protective asset. That meant when the president moved, she moved first. When the president stood still, she watched everything that moved. If you saw her near the president, that was already a tactical failure, because Alexis was only visible when she wanted you to know she was there. But for all her power, all her rank, Alexis didn't walk like someone looking to be respected. She walked like someone who had already decided whose respect mattered. And these guys at the gun range, they didn't make the cut. She only came to the range once every few months to recalibrate her personal gear. Her official weapons were maintained by agency armorers, but the gun she carried in her private case, that was hers. Custom .308 bolt-action platform, titanium chassis, integral suppressor, variable zoom optic with a Doppler-corrected HUD overlay, each component selected and installed by hand. Her fingerprints were the only ones that had ever touched it. It had no serial number, because it had no record, because the things she did with it weren't for history books. They were for clearance levels that didn't have names, just initials and numbers. And yet, standing there at the range, with a group of weekend warriors snickering behind her, Alexis didn't react. Not when they called her Barbie. Not when one whispered, maybe she's filming a TikTok. Not even when one leaned over her shoulder and said, this ain't Fortnite, sweetheart. She didn't flinch. She just unzipped the case, assembled the rifle, set her bipod, adjusted her cheek weld, and waited for the wind. Not because she needed it, but because she respected the math. The men didn't stop. They joked. They gestured. One of them, a guy with a full-arm eagle tattoo, pulled out a 12 gauge and said, let's give her a real show. You up for a challenge, Queen Latifah? That was the only time she blinked. Not out of offense, just confirmation that they were who she thought they were. She stood up slowly, walked to the target selection panel, chose simulated moving targets, randomized speed and trajectory, maximum difficulty, 10 shots, 5-second intervals, wind factor enabled. She returned to her rifle, settled in, fired, ping, fired, ping, 10 shots, 10 hits, no misses, no wasted movement, no dramatic breathing, no one-liners, just execution. The range went silent. The men stared, half in awe, half in disbelief. Then someone finally spoke. One of the younger guys, not mocking this time, just stunned. Ma'am, who are you? She didn't look at him. She stood, packed up the rifle, locked the case. And then, just before leaving, she turned and said, with that voice, low and clean, I'm the reason your president sleeps at night. And she walked out. No mic drop, no camera crew, just the kind of silence that only comes after a warning shot you didn't know was a warning. The next time Alexis showed up at the range, it wasn't to train, it was to breathe. She'd just finished a 36-hour protective detail across 3 cities and a summit with foreign diplomats. Her earpiece had barely left her ear, and she hadn't slept more than 2 hours in as many days. She needed something simple, something uncontrolled but contained. A steel target, a wind variable, a rifle. That was peace. But the men from last time were there again. Same group, same energy. And this time, they remembered her. It started the moment she walked through the gate. Look who's back, one of them said, grinning wide. CIA Barbie. Another one chuckled. She came back for her trophy yet? She came back, 'cause she misses the attention. You know how girls get when they're ignored. She said nothing, just signed in, walked past them, and set her case on lane 4. There were 15 open lanes. They still took the one next to hers. The leader, the tall one with the fake Navy SEAL tattoo and a self-applied sense of authority, leaned over the divider. You shoot like that on TikTok, or was that a fluke last time? Alexis didn't look at him, didn't flinch, didn't acknowledge the question. Hey, he said louder. his voice gaining an edge. "I'm talking to you." She opened her case, unlatched the rifle, laid it out piece by piece. Her hands moved with a rhythm no civilian ever had. Everything quiet, exact, rehearsed like breath. "You some kind of contract shooter?" he pressed. Still no answer. "Come on, you that good and that quiet? I'd say you either kill people or you're scared to." She finally spoke, not loudly, just clearly. "Do you need something? Or do you just want to hear yourself fail to impress me?" He smiled, a smirk that turned bitter real fast. "Just try and make conversation. Be friendly. I didn't come here for friends." He stepped closer. "You always this cold. Bet you'd be real fun on a date." That's when she stood up. Not aggressively, not fast, just a controlled, intentional movement. Face to face now, and up close. She wasn't intimidating because she was bigger, she wasn't. She was intimidating because everything about her was steady. No blink, no twitch, no flinch, just pressure. The kind that says, "If this gets worse, you won't see the move before it ends you." "Step back," she said. "You threatening me?" She raised an eyebrow. "You hoping I am?" That paused him. The smile stayed, but the eyes changed. He couldn't read her, and men like him hated that. He stepped back 2 feet and lifted both hands like he was innocent. "Relax," he said. "Don't get your trigger finger twisted." She sat back down, returned to calibrating, but the mood had shifted. And in that shift, one of the others, the youngest guy in the group, maybe mid-20s, spoke up from behind. "Yo, if she's so good, why don't we make it interesting?" Alexis didn't respond. The guy kept going, head to head. "You and Travis. 5 shots each. Smallest grouping at 400 wins." "Wins what?" she said flatly. "Loser buys ammo." The group laughed. Travis, the leader, rolled his shoulders. "Sure," he said. "Let's see if the lady can do it twice." She looked at him, not irritated, just calculating. "Same targets?" she asked. "Yeah, you can go first." She shook her head. "You challenged. You go first." That got more chuckles. A couple of guys clapped. The show had begun. Travis stepped up. Custom AR-10. Bipod. High-end scope. Not cheap. Probably more rifle than he deserved. He lined up. Took his time. 5 shots. Tight grouping. He stepped back smug. "Your turn." Alexis didn't say a word. She walked to her lane. Adjusted the scope. Didn't even lie prone. Just took a kneeling stance. Steady as a machine. 5 shots. 1 breath. Pop, 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 pop. They hit so fast the range officer looked up. Target feed came back. Her grouping? The size of a dime. Dead center. Travis's. 3 in the center ring. 2 outside. And suddenly, the noise stopped again. "That's not possible," Travis said, staring at the screen. Alexis was already packing up. He walked over. "Hold up. What's your setup?" "Doesn't matter. You shoot like that in comps." "No." "You military?" "No." "Law enforcement?" "No." "Then what?" She snapped the case closed. Finally looked him dead in the face. "I shoot to protect people who matter. You shoot to impress people who don't." Then she walked past him. Again. But this time he followed. "I don't like being shown up," he said. "Then get better," she replied, without looking. "I'm just saying." He pushed. "People like you don't belong in this world. This is a man's space. Always has been." She stopped walking, turned, stepped so close their shoulders almost touched. And this time, her voice dropped even lower. "You want to know who I am?" He said nothing. She leaned in. "I'm the last thing 10 men saw before they died, and I never even had to run." He blinked. She continued. "I've pulled a trigger from 900 meters and watched the blood hit the ground before anyone heard the shot. I've ended hostage situations before the hostage knew they were being saved. And I've taken down trained killers who made fewer mistakes than you just did by opening your mouth." She stepped back, smiled not warmly, but with certainty. "And I didn't say a word to any of them either." She turned, left the range, didn't pay for ammo, didn't wave goodbye, didn't need to, because what she left behind was far heavier than spent brass. They couldn't let it go. That was their mistake, because men like them don't just hate being beaten. They hate being beaten by someone they can't control, label, or intimidate. A woman, a black woman, one who never raised her voice, one who walked in, outshot them, and left like they didn't matter. That stuck in their teeth. And rot always grows where pride gets wounded. 2 days later, Alexis returned to the range. She didn't have to. She could have gone to a dozen other facilities, cleaner, quieter, more secure. But she chose this one again for a reason, because it wasn't about being safe. It was about being seen, not by them, but by anyone who ever watched someone like her get pushed aside and stay silent. She came alone, as always. Same case, same hoodie, same measured walk. The moment she entered, the air shifted. They were waiting, this time not laughing, just watching. 3 of them flanked the entrance near the vending machines. One leaned against the counter, arms crossed. And Travis, he stood near her lane, blocking it. She walked up to him, stopped, said nothing. He didn't move. "You think you're better than us," he muttered. "You think 'cause you got some fancy gun and a stare that you're something special." She didn't answer, just waited. "I looked you up," he said. "No records, no socials, no name anywhere." "That's the point," she replied. He smirked. "CIA, huh? I didn't say that. You didn't have to." Then he leaned in slightly, voice lowering. "You come in here again, show off, try to humiliate my team. We're gonna have a different kind of problem." Her head tilted, just slightly. "Is that supposed to scare me?" she asked. "It's supposed to warn you." And then he said it, the line they couldn't uncross. "You don't belong here. Go back to wherever the F***K you're from. This place wasn't built for people like you." It didn't come out as a shout. It was calm, intentional, like he'd been waiting to say it, rehearsing it. And the other men didn't stop him, because they agreed. Alexis didn't react, didn't flinch. She just blinked, once, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a badge. Not a police badge, a federal protection credential. Level 6, presidential detail. He stopped breathing. "That's fake," one of the others said. Alexis looked him in the eye. "Call the number on the back." He didn't. None of them did, because they already knew. They just didn't want to. "I'm not here for you," she said calmly. "I come here because it's functional, because I don't like noise, because I don't need to prove anything to anyone." She looked at Travis. "But you decided to make it about dominance. You decided this place was yours to own, and anyone outside your box needed to be put back in line." She stepped past him, opened her case, unsnapped the rifle. "I'm not afraid of you," Travis said. She nodded. "You should be afraid of the people I keep safe, because when you threaten them, I'm the one who answers." And then, without looking back, she lined up a target. 800 meters, wind at 6 knots, light shift to the east. One breath, one shot, impact, center, clean. The range officer hit the feed and looked up. "New record," he said. No one clapped, because suddenly the joke was gone. But it wasn't over. As she packed up, one of the men stepped closer. "Hey," he said, not shouting now, just quiet, low, calculated. "You ever wonder what would happen if someone like you got caught alone in the parking lot out here?" She stood straight, turned, locked eyes. He didn't smile. He meant it. It wasn't hypothetical. It was a warning wrapped in cowardice. Alexis nodded slowly, then stepped close enough to whisper. "You ever wonder what would happen if the system you thought protected you suddenly turned on the lights?" He didn't respond. She kept going. "Because you're used to hiding in shadows. You're used to thinking no one's watching. But I don't miss. And I don't need to raise my voice to end someone's career. Or their life. Legally. Efficiently. Quietly." She tapped the badge once. Just a soft click against her chest. "You just made this official." And she left. That night, 3 black SUVs pulled into the range parking lot after close. Unmarked. 2 men in suits. 1 woman with a laptop. They didn't identify themselves. They asked for security footage. They asked for records. They asked for names. And the next morning, the range owner received a letter. You are hereby notified that your facility is now under federal review for compliance, inclusion, and officer conduct with respect to protected personnel and assets. Travis didn't come back. Neither did his crew. Alexis, however, did. She walked in, quiet as always. This time, the range officer nodded first. She nodded back. No words. She set up her lane, loaded 1 bullet, lined up her scope, and pulled the trigger. That sound, it wasn't just a shot. It was a verdict. When Alexis King entered the range 3 days later, she knew she wasn't alone. Not in a literal sense. The parking lot was only half full, and none of Travis's crew had returned since the federal audit was quietly triggered. No, it was something else now. She could feel it. Eyes. Patterns. Surveillance. Not amateur curiosity. Not gossip. Official interest. She recognized the pacing of the man at the vending machine. Law enforcement or military, trying to blend in, but too controlled in the shoulders. She recognized the pair of women in civilian clothes near the rifle lanes, pretending to compare calibers, but both carrying sidearms at their ankles. Not a civilian habit. Field agents, but not hers. She didn't belong to anyone anymore, which meant someone was checking who she did belong to. She set her case down at lane 3, went through the routine. Rifle out, bipod locked, scope calibrated, wind adjusted. She didn't fire. Not yet. She waited. And then, as expected, one of them approached. A tall man in a maroon polo shirt and a baseball cap too clean to be real. He walked like a recruiter, stopped 3 feet behind her. "Excuse me," he said, too polite. She didn't turn. Not interested. He smiled. "I'm not selling anything." "You are. What makes you say that?" "Because if you weren't," she said, adjusting her optic, "you wouldn't have approached someone who filed a discretionary firewall under Directive 49 Bravo." Silence, then a slight pause in his breath. That confirmed it. He was federal, but he didn't expect her to know what 49 Bravo meant. She stood up, finally turning to face him. "Here's your answer," she said calmly. "You don't need to know what I do. You just need to know that the president signs my deployment clearance with a separate pen than the one he uses for Congress." That stopped him cold. She stepped forward and said it. "If I say the word, Spectre Zulu, and someone in your chain of command doesn't flinch, then they're lying, or they're dead." His expression cracked, just for a second, because that phrase wasn't public, wasn't searchable. It was a clearance keyword, a buried one. Spectre Zulu was tied to off-books operations, black files, denied missions, kill switch level stuff, and only a handful of people in the entire defense ecosystem had access to it. He nodded once, not casually, but respectfully. Then he turned and left. The women at the back of the range followed soon after. She didn't need to look. She could feel the pressure leaving the room. Afterward, the range officer approached. Older man, former Marine, judging by the gait. He'd always kept things professional, but today he looked conflicted. "I gotta ask," he said. "You don't?" He nodded, accepting that. But then he said, "They said you might be a problem. Said you were stirring things up." She tilted her head slightly. "Did they mention how many complaints were filed against Travis and his team before I ever walked in here?" He paused. "They didn't, did they?" she said. "No. They didn't mention the woman he cornered in the parking lot last year, or the Iraqi vet he called desert trash during a match." He said nothing. They didn't mention the 3 internal reviews the owners buried before the feds got involved. Silence. Then she said it. "The difference between a threat and a correction is who holds the evidence." The next day, an email landed in the inbox of the range's owners. It was short. Subject line: Range Conduct Policy Update, mandated federal compliance. Inside were new rules, body cam requirements for instructors, audit log of all user interactions, Mandatory diversity and harassment training. At the bottom was a signature. DSSA Liaison to Homeland Oversight Council. Below that, in smaller font, recommendation submitted by Operative KX, enacted under Spectre Zulu Memo Authority. The owners didn't reply. They just posted the new policy. No announcement, no ceremony, but everyone in the range felt the shift. A week later, Alexis sat alone in her apartment, sipping water, when her phone, the secure one, buzzed. Unknown ID. Internal ping. She answered. A clipped, professional voice. Operative King, this is Director Lang. You've made waves. She said nothing. You embarrassed a network that prefers its problem silent. You know that. I didn't say anything. No, but you shot something, and sometimes that's louder. Pause. You've been offered reinstatement, tactical advisory, permanent field clearance, clean route back in. She looked out the window. Her city, her silence. I'm not interested. You're aware of what that means. Yes. Another pause. Why did you say Spectre Zulu? Because they forgot there are people still alive who earned that phrase. Click. Call ended. The message was clear. She wasn't being hunted, but she'd been seen. And once they see you, they either bring you in or start watching for cracks. She knew how to hold her posture, but now she had to hold her line. The final moment came 2 days later. She walked into the range, quiet as always. The regulars nodded. No one mocked her. No one challenged her. Lane 4 had been marked reserved. Inside was a folded envelope. No name, just a post-it on top. You didn't say much, but you said enough. Inside, a printout of a memo. Notice of termination, Travis Hensley. Under reasons. Code of conduct violation. Threatening behavior. Obstruction of federal procedure. Stamped. Finalized. Non-negotiable. She folded the memo. Didn't smile. Didn't frown. Just loaded her rifle. Lined up her scope. And fired once. Not to train. Not to compete. Just to remind the world. She never misses. The first attack didn't come from a gun. It came from file. 3 weeks after the Spectre Zulu memo reached the range's inbox, Alexis King received a notification that shouldn't have existed. Your TS/SCI background record is under administrative review. That was impossible. Clearances like hers weren't reviewed unless something massive had happened. A leak, an internal accusation, a mission compromise. She hadn't been on active assignment in nearly a year. But the system doesn't like being embarrassed, especially by someone it once owned. She didn't panic. She didn't call her contacts. She opened her archive. Not on her laptop, on a drive inside the wall of her apartment, fireproof, signal shielded, and powered by a slow drip lithium battery designed to simulate dormancy. She activated it manually, typed in the sequence. Ghost_4x/lock, 0/key, K117. The screen flickered, then lit up. Inside was a folder, /observation_mode. 7 years of timestamps. Dozens of incident reports, unredacted security footage, unpublished kill logs, and emails. Lots of emails. She hadn't always planned to collect evidence, but field agents learned quickly. Trust no one with your name, and document everything they pretend not to see. Back when she was deployed, she'd started logging strange omissions, intel that didn't match on paper, ops where her kills weren't recorded, missions where her presence was erased from after-action briefings. At first, she thought it was normal. Then she realized it was intentional. Someone had been managing her disappearance long before she walked off the field. She was never supposed to become visible. She was supposed to vanish before she could embarrass anyone. But now that she had, the pushback began. She flagged 3 recent indicators: a fake FOIA request using her name, a deleted internal commendation file she knew had existed, and a background check request sent to a civilian employer, an employer she never worked for. They weren't coming at her directly. They were trying to poison the paper trail, a common tactic in black budget systems. If you can't discredit a person, you make them a liability on record, and no one wants to touch them again. Alexis wasn't surprised. She was prepared. She printed 5 documents. 1, a signed directive showing she was deployed in Mozambique during a mission the agency said she hadn't participated in, along with encrypted drone footage proving she was the one who made the kill. 2, a transcript from a mission in Bahrain where a handler ignored intel she submitted, leading to 2 civilian deaths. Her memo was buried. She had the original. 3, a full email chain between 2 deputy directors discussing her problematic visibility after journalists spotted her in a background shot of a leaked photo. 4, her final psychological eval, marked cleared, exceptional, with a note that read, Operative demonstrates superior emotional regulation and lethal decisiveness. Atypical profile for long-term retention. Recommend limited-term service and rotation out before public exposure. 5, and finally, her Spectre Zulu clearance confirmation, signed by a now-retired general, the same one who once told her, the day you get noticed is the day they try to forget you. She uploaded everything to a private server, backed by ex-agency engineers she'd once pulled from a botched raid. She didn't owe them favors. They owed her lives. She sent a single message. If they try to burn me, this archive burns first. The encryption key, hidden in a file embedded in a podcast transcript. No one would find it unless she gave the keyword. She changed her apartment locks, bought a new phone, wiped the old one. Then she waited. The hit piece came 2 days later. Headline: Unknown female operative linked to unconfirmed CIA misconduct abroad. It was vague, but dangerous. The subtext did the damage. Sources claim she may have acted outside protocol. Her record is suspiciously light. Questions remain about her chain of command. The article never named her, but it used just enough to identify her to anyone looking. The timing? Too perfect. She smiled when she saw it, because now she had them. She sent one email to a former analyst turned journalist, a man she once extracted during a Havana embassy breach. He owed her. Big. Subject line: They forgot I don't need to speak loudly. I just need to hit first. Attached, one video. Bodycam footage from the gun range, day 1. Unedited. From a security cam no one knew was recording. Travis calling her Barbie. Mocking her. Threatening her. And her response. Not angry. Not unhinged. Just truth. The kind of truth that explains the whole system in under 3 minutes. The journalist posted it. Not on a big outlet. On a small platform. But it went viral in under 12 hours. They tried to erase her name, but forgot she knew how to aim. That was the caption. And then came the shift. A whistleblower from inside DHS confirmed that yes, her records had been flagged. But not because she was a threat. Because she was an inconvenience. Someone who made internal politics messy. Someone who documented too much. Someone who could prove too much. Alexis didn't speak to reporters. She didn't go on podcasts. She didn't tweet. She just released the next drop. A memo from inside the CIA. It read, Operative King's retention is inadvisable due to optics. If civilian exposure continues, consider strategic character erosion to reduce credibility. That memo hit like a bomb. Every outlet covered it. And suddenly, no one was asking, did she go rogue? They were asking, how many more like her have been buried? And Alexis, she wasn't celebrating. She was packing, not to run, to move forward. Because the war wasn't in the shadows anymore. It was out in the open. And the only weapon she needed now was the truth she never stopped writing down. You don't destroy someone like Alexis King with bullets. You use paper cuts and make sure the bleeding starts from within. The smear campaign had failed. The leaked footage had gone viral. And the memo, the one recommending strategic character erosion, had hit like a mortar in the middle of Langley's political firewall. So the system pivoted. It stopped pretending she didn't exist. Now, it would try to make her the villain of her own story. Day 3 after the leak, a blog post appeared from a so-called defense insider who'd never served a day in any classified division. Title: The Alexis King Myth. Overhyped, overpraised, and dangerous. The piece didn't accuse her of lying outright. Instead, it questioned, why was she never publicly acknowledged in CIA records? Why hasn't anyone seen her field results? Why does someone with presidential-level clearance need to shoot at civilian ranges? And the most dangerous lie of all, what if the truth is, she's just another armed ego with the hero complex? It didn't matter that the article was full of holes. It spread fast. By the end of the day, it had been reposted by 7 right-wing sites and 2 major centrist blogs that should have known better. Day 5, her bank account froze. No warning, no call, no apology. When she walked into the branch, the manager couldn't look her in the eye. Flagged for national security review, he said. By who? I'm not allowed to say. That night, her power shut off. Then her internet. Then her building's front lock stopped recognizing her key fob. Digital lockout. Standard agency-level tactic to destabilize rogue assets. Only she wasn't rogue. She was right. And now they were playing dirty. She didn't call for help. She didn't knock on doors. She went underground. Not into hiding. Into counter mode. Alexis activated what she called her noise kit. A mobile secure station designed for response-level deployments when staying in one place became dangerous. It fit in a backpack. Solar battery encrypted laptop. Portable signal scrambler. Flash drive dead switch. Analog ID kit. Hard copy of all datasets. Printed in microtype on fiber-thin laminate pages. Invisible to the eye unless heat scanned. She moved into a safe house she'd prepped 3 years earlier. Rented under a dummy identity. No smart locks. No utilities in her name. Silence wasn't retreat. It was reload. She started tracking the campaign. Not just the blogs. The signatures. IP traces. Metadata on the PDF headers of anti-King leaks. File history on the whistleblower retractions. And the patterns were all there. Same subnet clusters. Same timestamp offsets. Same linguistic fingerprints. It wasn't a crowd. It was a cell. A small group of high-clearance operators, backed by someone with federal authority, executing a smear program with military-grade precision, which meant it wasn't just about silencing her. They were covering something else. She dug deeper and found it. In one of her mission archives was a file labeled Neptune Trace. She flagged it 5 years ago. Anomalous equipment logs from a drone strike outside Tripoli. The target was listed as a rogue arms dealer. But Alexis had never believed that. She saw the footage. The strike had taken out 3 men, all unarmed. The metadata on the drone feed had been doctored. She knew, because she was supposed to take that shot, but it had been reassigned at the last second. Higher priority, they told her. She walked away that night uneasy. Now she knew why. Those 3 men, they were agency assets. Disavowed, then eliminated. Someone inside had cleaned house and blamed the kill on a different op to hide the trail. And her footage? It was the one hole in the story, because she never deleted it. Now, they needed her discredited before that footage resurfaced. So she resurfaced it herself. She posted it anonymously, hosted on a mirror node through a whistleblower defense fund. No commentary, no title, just the full drone log, the infrared scans, the false time codes, and the mission order trail showing who authorized it. And when, within 12 hours, the agency's press line released a vague denial. Within 24, Congress requested an internal briefing. And within 48, her power came back on. She didn't celebrate. She sat in the dark, eating a cold apple, watching the cycle spin. They wouldn't stop now. They'd panic. Cornered systems don't die quietly. They lash out. And the hit was coming next. Day 9. A local news segment ran a story. Unlicensed firearms trainer operating in Virginia facility. They blurred her face. Didn't name her, but showed her hands assembling the sniper rifle. Claimed she was conducting unauthorized tactical instruction on federal property. She wasn't. They knew it. But truth didn't matter now. They were setting up narrative friction, trying to give themselves legal footing to detain her if she stepped into the wrong county at the wrong time. So she called someone she hadn't spoken to in 5 years. His name was Luis Traeger, former DOJ, now a defense consultant. She'd saved his life once in Tunisia. They hadn't spoken since. But when she called, he answered on the first ring. "I need a time-stamped legal defense packet," she said. "Full immunity argument. Drafted and filed. Just in case." "You think they'll go that far?" "They already have." He paused. "You still have copies?" "All of them." "You protected me once," he said. "Let me return it." By day 12, the DOJ had quietly requested an oversight session on covert targeting of American operatives. The title was dry, but Alexis knew what it meant. They were bracing for a blowback they couldn't spin. That night, her burner buzzed. No name, no ID, just a number she hadn't seen since her final field tour. She answered. The voice was old, worn, familiar. "Alexis." She didn't speak. "I can't help you officially," the voice said, "but there are people who still believe in you." "I'm not asking for belief," she said. "I know." Pause. "You need to move soon." "How soon?" "They're not going to make the next shot look political. They're going to make it look personal." Click. She didn't sleep. Didn't panic. She finished her prep. Set up her mirror servers. Sent out the final trigger codes to her off-site allies. If they came for her, the truth would outlive her. Not in headlines. In documents. Signed. Sealed. Duplicated. She wouldn't die for revenge. She'd die as the last firewall between lies and exposure. And that made her the most dangerous woman on Earth. It started with a glitch. Not in a system, in a narrative. A newscaster stumbled on a line during a morning broadcast. Alexis King, whose alleged misconduct, excuse me, whose decorated service record. He paused, recovered, continued reading from the teleprompter. But the clip went viral, because for 2 seconds, the mask slipped, and people saw it. The truth wasn't just leaking now. It was rising, like heat from a system that could no longer contain itself. All Alexis had to do was keep holding the line. She didn't push. She didn't run. She let the walls collapse on their own. It began with a junior analyst, someone inside the agency, low clearance, no field history, quiet, invisible. She posted a thread on an internal-only forum. "We were told Alexis King was dangerous, but every doc I've reviewed tells a different story." She listed a recommendation letter from her first handler, praising her exceptional restraint under extreme pressure. Multiple commendations scrubbed from her official profile, but still stored in data backups. And an internal discussion where a deputy director asked, "How do we neutralize someone who never makes a mistake?" That thread got flagged within 10 minutes, but screenshots had already been taken, and they spread, first internally, then through private signal groups, then to the journalists who had once hesitated to say her name. Day 14. A classified document was leaked. Title: Apocalypse, Behavioral Containment Strategies for High Autonomy Assets. It detailed a protocol, not for field ops, for reputation dismantling, step-by-step guidance on how to discredit agents before they become liabilities, mute praise in official reports, create ambiguity in action logs, feed doubt into civilian background checks, leak just enough to raise questions, but never enough to prove intent. It was surgical, and Alexis's file matched all of it. Now the public didn't ask, did she go too far? They asked, what are they hiding? A military podcaster posted a full breakdown. What we're seeing isn't damage control. It's an erasure protocol that didn't complete in time. And the subject, Alexis King, the person whose silence protected this country while the rest of us slept. That quote opened an editorial the next day. The ghost who refused to disappear. It changed the narrative. She wasn't just a scapegoat. She was system check. Then came the interviews. People who had once been silent because they feared being blackballed now stepped forward. A former presidential advisor who'd seen Alexis save POTUS from an ambush in Istanbul. A veteran she pulled from a collapsing convoy in Niger, whose rescue was never reported because the operation itself had been denied. A field medic who treated her after a near-fatal op, saying she refused morphine. She said, I need to feel this so I remember what I'm carrying. cracks were no longer cracks. They were structural failures. Someone released an uncut audio file of a backroom meeting between agency directors. One voice asked, "What happens if King drops the Tripoli files?" Another answered, "Then we'll all have to find countries without extradition treaties." Boom. 3 resignations, 1 immediate investigation, and a memo from the National Security Committee acknowledging severe ethical violations related to internal containment operations. Her name wasn't mentioned. It didn't have to be. Everyone knew who cracked the seal. Meanwhile, Alexis didn't post. She didn't give interviews. She didn't speak at events. But she sent one signal, one image, posted without caption. A target sheet, 10 rounds, 1 ragged hole, dead center. It wasn't a boast. It was a reminder. She still didn't miss. Day 17. The system tried one more shot. Not at her. At everyone around her. A background check froze the whistleblowing analyst's security clearance. The medic got audited. The journalist server was breached. Classic retaliation. But it was too late, because now the public was watching. And someone somewhere leaked a master file. A 276-page report titled, King File, Asset Assessment, Tier 0 Liability or Legacy. In it, her full service history. All mission approvals, kill confirmations, training commendations, field evals, psychological profiles, and in bold, red text on the final page, unparalleled field discipline, lethality unmatched, emotional insulation high, loyalty uncompromised, visibility risk. That last word, risk, that was the sin she was guilty of. Not insubordination, not misconduct. She couldn't be controlled. And so, the story broke wide open. News anchors reversed course. Podcasts retold her missions with reverence. Think tanks hosted panels titled, Asset or Example, The Alexis King Dilemma. The White House declined to comment, but insiders confirmed. She still has her clearance. She's still listed. And she's still alive. That last one carried weight, because in her world, being alive after this meant one thing. They couldn't beat her. Late one night, her burner rang again. Same number as before. Same voice. You turn it. The voice said, "You flipped the narrative, and you didn't have to say a word." Alexis answered, "They wrote my silence as permission. I rewrote it as evidence." Click. She moved again. Not to hide, to walk freely. Because now, the world saw her for what she was. Not a myth. Not a problem. A reckoning. She went back to the range. Same hoodie. Same case. Same walk. Lane 4. Reserved. When she opened the case, the rifle gleamed like it had been waiting. She lined up a 1,000-meter target. Wind, 7 knots. Slight rise. She exhaled. Fired. Hit. Then left the target hanging. Didn't pull it. Didn't mark it. Because now, everyone knew what it meant. She wasn't aiming at the bullseye. She was aiming at the system. And she'd hit it. Dead center. The thing about collapses, it never looks like a fall. Not at first. It looks like denial. Then delay. Then a sudden silence from people who used to speak a little too often. And finally, resignation. Not always signed, but always written all over their faces. That's what Alexis King witnessed in the weeks that followed. Not victory, but surrender. Day 21. The CIA issued a sealed internal memorandum titled, Post-King File Damage Control Protocols. It listed 37 talking points. None of them disputed her credentials. None challenged her records. None denied the existence of Spectre Zulu. Instead, they focused on public optics. Avoid direct references to past operational designations. Do not confirm or deny prior assignments. Reinforce message of agency integrity while allowing narrative flexibility. Translation: we can't bury her, but we don't have to praise her. Still, it was too late. The world had already shifted. Day 23. A congressional subcommittee announced a hearing on covert retaliatory actions against protected operatives. Alexis wasn't summoned. She didn't need to be, because her name was now a category. Every whistleblower, every black bag asset, every buried operative whose file was dusted off that day. They were called King-level exposure risks. The phrase stuck. Day 25. The Department of Justice issued a quiet report. One line stood out. We find credible evidence of systemic procedural abuse intended to erase or discredit Operative Alexis King, despite her exemplary service and the absence of misconduct. No apology, no press conference, just words on paper. But for people in her world, that line was a sentence carved in concrete. Day 27. The range changed hands. Ownership flipped. New management came in. The man who once looked away when Alexis was mocked? Gone. His office, empty. His desk, cleaned out under federal supervision. No one mentioned his name again. Lane 4 was repainted. A small sign was placed at the booth. Reserved for precision, in honor of those who never miss. Alexis didn't smile when she saw it. She just nodded once, loaded a single round, and put a hole through the bullseye without checking the wind. Day 29. The smear blogs stopped publishing. One got subpoenaed. One went dark. One published a final clarification that read like surrender. We acknowledge prior reports regarding Alexis King relied on incomplete context. That's as close as people like that get to saying, we were wrong. But the real collapse? It didn't happen in the press. It happened in rooms with no microphones. Day 30. An encrypted message hit Alexis's inbox. One line, he's stepping down. She didn't need to ask who. One of the men who'd authorized her isolation. The one who suggested containment via discrediting. Gone. Retired for family reasons. Another followed. And another. The system didn't collapse from pressure. It collapsed from truth exposure over time. The kind that rots authority not with shouting, but with documentation. She didn't attend any hearings. Didn't step near a podium. But she did send a file to one committee clerk. Inside it, mission logs, after-action reports, body cam footage, a signed memo. Kill confirmed by King, no collateral. A letter. Just one paragraph. This isn't about revenge. It's about records. People like me don't need to be thanked. We just need to stop being erased before the truth's cold. The clerk added it to the archive and underlined one phrase in the hearing notes. Stop being erased. That became the motto of a new internal oversight unit. Unofficially, they called it Division K. Day 34. A civilian contractor published a piece titled, The Asset Who Outlasted the Machine. It was half praise, half warning. The final line read, you can bury a person, you can bury a story, but not both if they've kept the receipts. It trended for a week, and then, as if coordinated, everything slowed down. The headlines moved on. The analysts logged their notes. The pressure washed out like a tide after a quiet storm. And Alexis, she kept walking, unbothered, not because she'd won, but because the weight wasn't hers anymore. The system now had to carry her story. She visited the range one last time. The clerk handed her a sealed envelope. Inside, a simple thank you note. No name, just a signature. TL, the former range manager's daughter. She'd seen the footage. She'd heard the threats. She knew her father had covered for the wrong people. Her note said, I'm sorry no one stood up. I'm sorry you had to. But because you did, I'm here. And I will never be silent when it counts. Alexis folded it, kept it in her rifle case. That night, she sat on her apartment floor. No lights, no music, just silence. And that mattered, because silence used to mean loneliness. Now it meant legacy. There was one last thing to do. She opened a file she'd never shown anyone. A folder titled, Last Shot. Inside was a full report. How she documented everything. How she anticipated the backlash. How she built a system of accountability from the inside, while operating outside. She uploaded it to a secure academic archive. Made it public. No fanfare. Just a line of metadata at the top. For anyone who's ever been told to stay quiet, just a little longer. Then she powered down the terminal and walked away. Not to hide, to live. Because Alexis King was never a symbol, never a brand, She was a reality check in human form. And now, the world finally understood. You don't need to be loud to dismantle a lie. You just have to survive long enough to tell the truth out loud. The ones who stayed silent never expected her to last this long. They thought Alexis King would burn out, break down, disappear, because that's what usually happens. The system doesn't need to destroy you. It just needs to exhaust you. But Alexis didn't break. She didn't argue. She didn't flinch. And now, she was still standing, while the people who once whispered around her were finally looking her in the eye. It started with a knock, a quiet one, middle of the afternoon. No protocol, no perimeter alarm, just 2 knocks, even, respectful. She opened the door. No weapons, no need. Standing there was a woman in her 40s, gray suit, binder under one arm. Her name tag read, C. Mendoza, Internal Review, Office of Federal Oversight. Alexis waited. The woman swallowed hard, then spoke. We did nothing when the first rumors started. We told ourselves you were being handled, that the higher-ups had a plan. She paused, looked at her, but it was just cowardice. Alexis didn't move, didn't answer. The woman held out the binder. These are the closed reports. Everything that mentioned your name and was flagged without reason. Some of them are redacted, but they won't be for long. We're unsealing all of it. Alexis took the binder, thumbed through it, recognized a report from Bahrain, another from Ukraine, one from a domestic training incident where she was praised in person, but left off the written record. Why now, she asked. The woman hesitated, then answered quietly, because the only thing worse than burying the truth is realizing you buried the one person strong enough to carry it. The next day, she received a message. Not digital, not encrypted. A letter, handwritten, folded 3 times, delivered by courier. It read, I used to believe in the system. I used to believe that people like you were dangerous because you didn't answer to anyone. Now I see, the danger wasn't you. It was the silence we gave to those who abused your loyalty. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you know, we're still learning how to be better than we were. Signed only with initials, R.H. She remembered him. He'd been in a position to speak once. He hadn't. Then it snowballed. Not with confessions, but with acknowledgments. A young officer from the range approached her in the parking lot. Not sheepish, not defensive, just honest. I didn't laugh, he said, but I didn't say anything either. She looked at him, waited. I told myself it wasn't my business, but I saw it. All of it. The way they spoke to you. The way they backed off when you didn't blink. He shifted awkwardly. I just wanted you to know I remember it now. Exactly as it happened. She nodded once. Then remember it louder next time. He did. 2 weeks later, he published an op-ed in a national paper. Title, I was there. She didn't flinch. We did. It went viral. Another message came via burner. An old contact, NSA support. Never met in person. Only shared field comms and one surveillance extraction. His voice cracked through the static. They're scared now, because if you made it through this, then every other lie we buried might come crawling out too. She said nothing. He added, for what it's worth, I recorded every brief we ever got about you, even the ones they told us to delete. I've got them locked. Yours if you want them. She paused. I don't need revenge. He replied, not revenge, just weight redistribution. It kept building, not fanfare, not celebrity, something cleaner, a kind of slow, collective realization that the silence they all let hang around Alexis for so long had always been a mistake. One day, while grabbing supplies, she heard it from a man in line behind her. Civilian, retired Navy by the look of the hat. Didn't introduce himself. Just said, you're the reason my niece didn't quit basic. She saw your file. Said, if they couldn't break her, they're not breaking me. Alexis turned. He smiled, nodded once, didn't need a reply, and she didn't give one. Because now, the words weren't the point. The witnessing was. Later that week, she received a final message. This one wasn't paper or email. or encrypted ping. It came from someone she never expected to hear from. Travis, the man from the range. The one who tried to humiliate her, mock her, threaten her. He wasn't in uniform anymore. Hadn't been since the audit. But somehow, her contact routing had stayed the same. She found a note waiting in her secured dead drop. Simple handwriting. For sentences. You didn't destroy me. You exposed me. And I deserved it. I won't ask for forgiveness. But I will never carry a gun again. She held the paper in her hand for a long time, then burned it. Not out of hate, because it didn't belong in her archive. Her archive was for the truth, not for the people who'd only seen it too late. But not all late is lost. Some of them changed. That was enough. By the end of the month, a foundation was announced, funded quietly by an anonymous donor, staffed by veterans, agents, operatives. Its mission: to protect, verify, and document the work of those who serve without public recognition, so they are never erased again. Its name? The King Registry. No website, no press kit, just one sentence on a locked homepage. If you know, you know. If you don't, she wasn't yours to understand anyway. Alexis didn't attend the launch, didn't sign the charter, but she smiled when she heard about it, because this was the kind of reckoning that didn't need applause. It just needed to last longer than the silence that came before, and it did. That night, Alexis walked the perimeter of a quiet clearing just outside of town, a training ground. Nothing official, just earth, wind, and distance. She set her bag down, assembled her rifle. No one else around, no audience, no proving ground, just her, and the scope, and the sound of breathing that had never once betrayed her. She lined up a target at 1,200 meters, not for score, not for memory, just to confirm one last thing, that after all this, everything still held. She fired. The round flew, and when the dust settled, a hole, dead center. She stood, packed the rifle, folded a single sheet of paper, placed it in a box, locked it, buried it under the old oak tree at the edge of the clearing. No marker, no GPS tag, just a memory. The last line on the page. I was never the story. I was just the one who kept the ending honest. Alexis King walked without a shadow, not because the sun was behind her, but because after everything she'd survived, everything she exposed, nothing left behind her could catch up. She didn't vanish. She transitioned from name to symbol, from asset to echo, from ghost to standard. The world didn't forget her. It wasn't allowed to. She didn't retire in the traditional sense. No ceremony, no folded flag, no commemorative coin, no scripted thank you from someone who once signed off on her missions, but never knew her name. Instead, she submitted one form. It had no headline, just a line that read, "Termination of federal asset status, voluntary exit, no succession requested." They tried to respond, tried to offer a position and oversight, advisory roles, special task force leadership. She declined, not out of spite, but because she'd already finished the real mission, the one no one assigned her, the mission to be undeniable. On the day she left the city, she wore no gear, just jeans, hoodie, duffel bag. She didn't leave from an airport, didn't use a convoy. She walked down a street where 5 years ago, no one looked her in the eye. Now, one officer passing on patrol nodded, respectful. A barista from a corner cafe she'd never spoken to handed her a cup of water as she passed. No words exchanged. She took it, sipped once. "Good luck," he said quietly. She nodded, then kept walking. She boarded a train. No security detail, no classified signal, just a seat by the window, facing forward. She didn't look back, because everything worth carrying had already been made permanent. Hours later, she arrived at a quiet town near the edge of nowhere. No one there recognized her, and she liked it that way. She bought a small house, one floor, no cameras, planted rosemary outside, grew her own vegetables. She didn't stop training, but she stopped preparing for war, because she wasn't waiting for another enemy. She was done letting other people dictate when the fight began. Inside the house was a drawer, Inside the drawer, a folded paper with one name on it. The name of a girl in Virginia. ROTC candidate. First-generation college student. Shooting scores higher than anyone in her class. Black. Quiet. Fierce. Alexis had read about her in a minor publication. One paragraph. She mailed her a letter. You don't know me yet. You will someday. And by then, I hope you've never had to walk alone the way I did. No return address. Just a small symbol on the envelope. A crosshair, not pointed outward, but inward. A mark only someone who understood would recognize. Every month, Alexis walked out to the same field. No range markers, just distance. She'd set a target. No name on it, no shape, just a blank white square. Then she'd fire. Once, she never missed. But she wasn't aiming to hit. She was aiming to remember. To remember what it meant to fire without anger. To act without orders. To still be dangerous, without needing to prove it. One day, she returned home and found an envelope at her door. No stamp, no seal. Inside was a photo. It showed Lane 4 at the range. New coat of paint, fresh targets, and a plaque, reserved for those who set the standard, in honor of Alexis King. She didn't cry. She didn't frame it. She folded it, placed it beside the girl's letter, and closed the drawer. In another city, someone knocked on a senator's door, dropped off a USB drive. It contained audio files, not of Alexis speaking, but of others. People who had once covered tracks, lied under oath, discredited others to protect themselves. The senator played one clip, paused it, then said, "And she just gave this to us?" The aide nodded. No message, no threat, just the truth. The senator leaned back, smiled. That's the most dangerous thing she's ever done. Time passed. The headlines faded, but the name didn't, because it wasn't a name anymore. It was a checkpoint, a filter, a standard. At recruitment briefings across agencies, you'd hear it in whispered context. Don't pull a King. Make sure this isn't another Alexis situation. Double-check the file. You never know who you're dealing with. And quietly, at training ranges, new cadets would say, "I heard about her. She didn't raise her voice. She just hit center mass and left." One day, in the quiet town where she'd settled, a visitor came. Not a threat. A young woman, tight posture, short hair, black tactical boots. She didn't introduce herself right away. Just stood by the rosemary bush. Alexis stepped outside. Waited. The girl said, "You sent me a letter." Alexis didn't answer. Just waited. I didn't understand it then. I do now. Still quiet. Then the girl added, "They try to say you were a ghost. A myth. But the deeper I got into training, the more your silence made sense." A pause. "I just came to say thank you." Alexis nodded, then said, "Don't thank me. Just make sure no one forgets." The girl saluted. Alexis didn't return it. She didn't have to, because that wasn't her rank anymore. It was her legacy. Later that evening, Alexis walked the perimeter of her property. No weapons, just memory. She stopped under an old tree, dug gently with her hands, unearthed a lockbox. Inside, her last field ID, her first mission coin, a photo of her holding her rifle at 19, and a folded sheet of paper with 10 lines of mission code. She added one more item, a bullet, polished, untouched, not to fire, but to represent the shot she never had take, because the truth had landed before the weapon did. She locked the box, buried it again. No marker, no coordinates, just the weight of it all, tucked into the earth like a seed. Then she walked back inside, closed the door, and turned off the light. No news alert came, no viral post, but in the offices of quiet power, people noticed. The file stopped updating. Her name stopped pinging. No travel data, no financial changes, no footprints, because Alexis King had done the one thing the system never expected her to do. Disappear by choice, not in shame, not in fear, but because her job was never to exist forever. It was to make sure no one forgot what it took to stand where no one else would. They tried to erase her, But what she built didn't need their permission to last.